So let's talk about grief and loss. So a lot of people only connect grief and loss in death. And actually we can experience grief and loss with all kinds of things. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. If we think about loss, we can grieve a loss with any kind of life change or life transition. So, and they don't always have to be negative things, right? Like, yes, they can be. They can be things like divorce or a move where we're no longer around people that we love and care about. They can also be positive things like graduating from high school or graduating from college, like positive things that we've had in our life, right? Significant changes in a routine or changes in careers that are positive changes, right? We maybe have moved in a job that is a positive thing, but still it's a significant change that it's just hard. Significant changes that we have in our life, again, can be positive, can be negative, right? A positive career change that we really wanted in our life, but yet we grieve the loss of maybe our coworkers and our friends that we had at our old job, or the routine that we had at our old job. Even though we really like our new job, we can still grieve the loss of those types of things. We've also seen an uptick in grief in relation to people now working from home, which is kind of interesting because there's been a lot of individuals who have always wanted to work from home, and now they call it telecommuting, right? So they're working from home because of COVID, and now they recognize that, oh, I don't know that I love this so much. I don't have my coworkers around me to chit chat and talk sports with, or talk about a favorite TV show that I like to watch, or whatever the case may be, right? That social aspect that we have in our jobs that we no longer have anymore because we're working from home. It doesn't, we can't still communicate with our coworkers, but it's differently, right? We're either doing it virtually or through email or other kinds of communication. We don't have, as we walk by their desk, to go grab a cup of coffee or grab lunch or whatever the case may be. So it's just a change that is hard. So for some people, especially somebody who's maybe worked in their field for 10, 20, 30 years, and now they're working from home, that's been a really, really hard adjustment for individuals. For a lot of people, that's not been a positive change, even though they maybe don't miss sitting on the freeway and getting stuck in traffic. They still struggle with the fact that they don't have that type of structure or that routine of being in the office or being at the lunchroom to be able to talk and chat with their coworkers and their colleagues, because that type of social aspect is different. So those types of losses are very real. These are just a few examples of things that we can grieve that are not necessarily related to death or significant loss in our lives. Now, grief is very tricky, whether we are dealing with traditional grief of a loved one, somebody who's passed away, even an animal, right? We grieve the loss of our animals that are in our lives as well, because grief is overwhelming, especially the traditional grief that we feel and that we deal with, because it can come in what we call waves, right? So you'll be going about your day, and sometimes a memory trigger will happen, sometimes nothing happens, and all of a sudden you're just kind of buried by this wave of emotion that you don't even know why, and you just overwhelming sadness or just feeling really down by the grief. That kind of what we would consider, that typical grief of a loss or of a loved one. But that can also happen with, loss in everyday life, right? Whether it's losing a job, right? Maybe you lost a job that wasn't your choice, right? You miss those people that you worked with. You miss the job that you used to do. It wasn't a choice of yours that you were maybe forced out of, or something along those lines. That type of grief can kind of hit you really hard in what we call like waves of grief. Those types of waves can feel very, very overwhelming for people, because it's it is a lot of emotion. It's a lot of pain, really. And so for a lot of clients, they feel like maybe they're doing something wrong. They don't understand, like, well, I was fine 5 minutes ago, and then all of a sudden they're kind of buried by this overwhelming feeling of being sad or sometimes angry, right? Anger is something that is often felt with grief, right? They get very frustrated and angry because of whatever the loss is, whether, again, a person or a situation, because they feel frustrated by it. Those grief waves that kind of hit somebody when they have lost something is really, really overwhelming. I think that's something that is clients often will talk about, is like, oh, I was okay, I was doing fine, and then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, and they're not even sure why. And they're just kind of buried by these intense feelings. So one of the ways to work through grief, and really the only way to go through grief is just that, to go through it. But one of the ways to help with that process is self-compassion. Self-compassion is not typically something that comes naturally for humans. It is something that has to be practiced, because self-compassion is important when you're grieving the loss of, whether it's a life transition, a change in something, or an individual. Being able to talk yourself through a situation in a really compassionate way is very, very helpful when you're dealing with a grieving process. We can be really hard on ourselves in the way we talk about, maybe it's taking too long. Like, I put that in quotation marks because there's no time limit on grief. Like, you need to process that in whatever time period that you need. So if you're saying to yourself, like, I'm taking too long, this is too much time, or whatever the case may be, that's where that self-compassion can be really, really beneficial for you, because you can say to yourself, hey, it's okay. Yeah, it's been a while. Yes, I'm struggling still, but it's okay. I need to be able to work through this. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to struggle with some frustrations about the loss of this situation or this individual, whatever the case may be. That's a really key component in being able to work through a grief wave, if you will. And, there's a lot of other ways that you can work through it. There's, rituals are a really important way to be able to work through grief. That's a very, very personalized and very individualized process. I love to create rituals for people to be able to help them process through grief. What can that look like? That's something that I love to talk about with clients. So if that's something that you are interested in doing, I'd love to create something to help you work through whatever that grief process is. If you're interested in doing that, I'd love to be able to help you. So let me know.